Without any further ado, let's get into our first topic of the day, a team that's actually playing right now.
Right me out.
Your LSU baseball Tigers. ReBoHustle. LSU baseball. How we doing?
I'd say a successful week. You did take a loss, which is fine. As long as you don't lose the series, you're in good shape to at least hold your spot in the standings. And for being honest, this week was highlighted by a player that you've grown pretty fond of this week, at least, and Ethan Fry. Kind of saves you on Wednesday against Southeastern in a tough spot. Comes in, pitch hits, gets on either a single or a double. Forget what it was, but I think he was a scoring run. He also kind of solidifies himself as a needed bat. So now we have 12 guys that, personally, I can confidently say, yeah, I'm fine with those guys taking at bats every day. And to have 12 is kind of unheard of, especially from what we've come to grow and see from LSU baseball, at least in the past 2 years, where we've only had like 9 that have been on a roll.
Yep.
But unfortunately, he kind of Xavier was trying to pick him off at first, very similar to Tommy White last year. He slides back into the bag, jams his shoulder up, got pulled from the game. It was scary to see that, because you go back and think, oh, Tommy White had to get surgery in the offseason, but he did play very well during the season after taking a week or so off. But according to Jay Johnson, it's not as serious as what Tommy did last year, and maybe a week or so out, he might even be in the rotation for this weekend.
All good news.
Would you like to take the weekend?
Yeah. Speaking on Ethan Fry specifically, he was a guy I know you were really excited about last season.
I mean, how can you not 6'7"?
Exactly, from a prospect perspective. Like, he's huge. He can hit the ball. He's very fast, not only for his size, but just in general, a very fast player. And he's versatile as well. He knows how to hit the ball both with power and through the gap. He can play the outfield, and we've seen him take some cuts at first base. So he's a very versatile player, and he's learning. He's learning every single day, and he's getting better and better, almost to that point where it feels like he should be an everyday starter, or almost to that point where he should be an everyday starter. You and I have talked about how we have 5 guys who we can confidently start in the outfield, which is something different from LSU. It was kind of always you have 2 guys, but who's the third? Now it's kind of like you can move 5 guys around and put them wherever you want them, and I think it's very matchup dependent, so I think it'll be really exciting to see how Jay uses the different matchups, whether it's a lefty or righty, a guy who throws a lot of fastballs versus a lot of breaking balls, because, if they're throwing a lot of breaking balls, we may use our more experienced guys who can not only hit the breaking balls but know when and when not to swing. And then if you have guys throwing higher end fastballs, that's when you put Ethan Fry in and you let him power it out to right field. So really exciting stuff from our batting, except for this past Sunday. Like you talked about, we take a loss to Xavier. A lot of people are going to blame either Thatch or Nate, but you let 2 runs go. If LSU lets 2 runs go, you should win the ball game. Our bat should be able to score more than 2 runs, and we just weren't able to do it. I think we only had like 4 guys who got a hit, and those guys got 1 or 2. We struck out 9 total times in the game. It wasn't a great performance from our offense. But I think Thatcher's getting better. As much as people want to give him flack for, he was supposed to be our ace and now he's our Sunday guy, I think he's a very good Sunday guy. If you look around other teams, he might be one of the best Sunday guys you got. Because even though he'll allow 4 to 5 hits and 1 or 2 runs, he doesn't allow much more than that. I don't think he's ever a guy who's going to shut out a team, but I also don't think he's a guy who's going to allow 2 home runs in the same inning and get you into a huge hole that you can't come out of.
Yeah, people want to look at pitching. Like, even I was like, pitching was kind of weak, because the way they scored their runs were a wild pitch advances the runner to the third, and just some like real bonehead mistakes, if we're being honest. And but yeah, you can't come into a non-SEC series and only put up 1 run and expect to win the game. So it's totally on the offense, but the pitching could have been better for sure.
Yeah, and I think this weekend, it is our first SEC weekend, right?
Yes.
Okay, so first SEC weekend, we have probably the best pitcher LSU has seen, other than Paul Skeens. I would say the best pitcher LSU has had since Aaron Nola, and I compare him a lot to Aaron Nola. He kind of just reminds me of him, just that calm collectedness, the way he pitches, the way he carries himself, his attitude. He reminds me a lot, and that's Luke Coleman. He's been an absolute stud. Mississippi State is our first series. Ever since they won the national championship, they have not held up their end of the bargain. So hopefully this is a series we can come out and show the SEC that loss to Xavier was just a fluke.
Yeah, and it's better to hear Mississippi State being our SEC opener, because at first I know one of our first road series is against Texas A&M, who we all know is very tough. I believe they beat Texas as well. But our home opener is against Vanderbilt, which I got to see 3 games of them live, and they don't quit. No matter what happens, they don't quit. But also, good news around the country is Wake Forest lost their first ACC series in over a year to Duke, which is a good ball club, but weren't ranked number 1. They were like 19 or something like that. But so even though you take a loss on the weekend, you were 3 in the rankings last year. Last week, you're 2 now.
Yeah,
so we're moving up and we're staying high. That's all that really matters.
We can complain all we want, but it's easy to complain when you're number 2 in the country, and you have to nitpick everything. Overall, I think we've seen a lot of guys show up that we didn't expect to. One of those being our new Saturday starter, Gage Jump. He has been fantastic. I'm pretty sure before the season you talked about him, and I was like, yeah, he's Gage Jump. He'll be pretty good. But I didn't expect him to be like this, and he has been absolutely phenomenal. He's kind of playing that Ty Floyd role from last year, where it's like, man, you know what you're going to get when he's on the mound, and he's been phenomenal. And I'm really excited about our Friday, Saturday, and to have Thatch on Sundays, who's going to try to control the game as much as he can, as long as he doesn't get too rattled. I think as long as he doesn't get in his own head, he's a solid SEC player. So with SEC play coming up and me feeling confident in our 3 starters feels really good. I feel like we didn't have that last season. We knew Friday Paul Skeens was always going to hit for us. We knew our Friday games would be great. We felt okay on Saturdays, and then Sundays were up in the air for a while. But I feel like this year our rotation, very solid, very excited about the pitching, as long as our bats can do their job.
Yeah, that's another massive takeaway from this weekend is Gage Jump's really been on like a pitch count. He saw 1 batter or 2 batters in his first game as a Tiger, and then came in and started in Houston, looked fine, got pulled in the 3rd just because off a pitch count only. It was like he's up to 60 pitches or so, and I think this week he pitched 90 or 80, something like that. So I in my opinion, the pitch count's over. He's proven that he can let it fly for as long as he needs to. We actually saw a couple of coaches' conferences with the pitchers that aren't very common with Jay Johnson. Normally when Jay Johnson walks to the mound, he's pulling a pitcher. I believe he was walking to the mound and saying, hey, are you okay? How's the arm? Because with these Tommy John recoveries, he worries so much about them that even if they feel 100%, he had to start him in this season on a pitch count.
Yeah, with 3 or 4 guys having to have Tommy John last year out of our pitching staff, you've got to be careful with the health and make sure they can stay healthy and stay in the rotation, especially when you have a guy like Gage Jump who's really come out of nowhere and become a solidified starter even through SEC play. So Gage Jump has come out of it looking high. I think, we're seeing guys like Stephen Milam be a really big part of this offense. He's locked himself into the lineup at this point. He was a spot start a couple times, and now he's not leaving. Michael Braswell is highly improved with the bat in his hands. As much as I hated on him in the beginning, and he wasn't great at South Carolina. He hit like 250 last season. he's one of the guys who I feel like at this point, he's coming up with a hit almost every game. He started off the season slow. I think he started off like 0-10 until he got his first single, and now he's hitting doubles and triples almost every single contest. And that's, you could see the excitement on his face when he does it too. I think that's what I love about this team too, is that every time they do something, you can tell that they love it. The new celebration we've been seeing where they swipe under the letters, and they say this is for you, or this is for the Tigers, or whatever they say, like this. You can feel the pride in the school and the pride in the team, and I think that's a really big part of why we've been succeeding so far, even without the big star names like Paul Skeens and Dylan Cruz that we lost in the past draft. I think, for me, the biggest question marks with this LSU team moving forward is Tommy White going to be able to get back into his rhythm? You know, he's been kind of inconsistent lately, I believe. I don't think he's like a bad player by any means, of course. I think Tommy White is still Tommy White. But, you know, we've seen some inconsistencies out of him, swinging at almost every pitch, never lets a first pitch go, always going to hack at it. Can Travinsky kind of maintain what we saw last year when, you know, he was that guy when we needed a hit? Travinsky was the guy who put it in play for us, and can he get back to that level? And then can we just make sure that our relievers come in and don't give up the lead that the starters got us. I think if we can look at those three things, the consistency of our star players and the consistency of our relievers, I'll feel very comfortable with this team moving forward through SEC.
Yeah, I mean, to equate it to basketball, our star players aren't showing up, but our role players are there, at least offensively. And so to see, like, I'm not sitting here saying Tommy White and Hayden Travinsky need to get it together. I believe they will get it together. Both of them have struggled a couple weeks in a row now, but they're still Tommy White and Hayden Travinsky.
Yes,
they have the potential to drive in 8 million RBIs each.
Yes, exactly. I mean, we saw stretches last year where Trey Morgan wasn't seeing the ball like he normally does. I wouldn't say Dylan Cruz. Dylan Cruz got he had like a 75 game hit streak or something, or on base streak, whatever it was. Yeah. So we kind of take him out of the equation, but. I mean, you saw guys last year who were very, very good for us, and they'd go through stretches where they weren't very good. I mean, Dugas, Beloso, like I said with, you know, Jordan Thompson, Trey Morgan, like those are guys who we knew we could count on, but they weren't always there. And players go through that. I mean, it's baseball. If you fail 7 out of 10 times, you're still a Hall of Fame player.
Yep. So
we can't expect perfection, but I expect Tommy White to be that 100 RBI guy. I expect Hayden Travinsky to be the 25 home run guy. Like, I know this team will get it together, and I think we always play up and down to our competition. I think that's something that this team does. I think Jay Johnson is a great coach is like, hey, this game matters. The players know it too. So I think once we see SEC play, we'll really start to ramp up and be a really good squad like I expect us to be. Anything else on LSU baseball before we move on?